What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to another ESO video. So today what we're going to be showing is my DragonKnight diary or build video. I don't know which one to call it because this DragonKnight has been made about a month ago, and it's pretty much showing progression of what I've done, and I'm going to show you my build and all that stuff. So we're going to go into a detailed overview of pretty much the build, skills, champion points, all the items, potions, and stuff I used. And at the end of it, I'll be showing you some screenshots of like parses and whatever I've done. So yeah, hopefully you guys will enjoy it. I know a lot of people have been asking me to make a build video or guide, I guess, for my DragonKnight. And I would have made it sooner, but I still wanted to do a bit more testing before I made an official video of it. So here it is. And yeah, so as always, with all my build videos, I'll go over to gear first, then skills, then champion points and whatnot. So let's start off with the basic gear, and then if you don't have it, I'll list some replacements or stuff you can use in, like, if you don't want to use what I have or just don't have it. So our first set is the Hunding's Rage set. You can craft it somewhere in, I think, the rift down here. I don't have it unlocked on this character. I have it unlocked on another character, but there's like a way shrine here, and then the crafting station is somewhere around there. So with that said, I used 5 body pieces of Hunding's Rage, and the reason why is you get the extra weapon damage if you have it all in body. Now technically what I did before the transmutation system came out with Clockwork City is I had 3 Hunding's Rage pieces on body and 2 weapons, but after that I could change my traits, and then I switched it to 5 body. So of course you would want divines on everything, and stamina, that increases your damage, and stamina of course. And next we have the Beladreth set. Now this one is kind of changeable depending on your playstyle. I do a lot of dungeons and trials, and usually in Dungeons and Trials, there's more AoE and a lot of ads you have to kill. So having the triple burst is slightly better than running like Krog or the Celine set. So that's why I have this one. It really depends on what you do. If you just like parsing, I think Krog is slightly better for the single target. However, it really just depends on what you do. So I run Beladreth. I run 7 medium pieces, all divines, stamina. And if you don't think you could survive well enough with like a flat 17,000 health, you can always use 1 heavy piece, and it's all crafted. These Hunting Rage pieces are crafted. So if you were to switch it out, I'd probably go with like a chest piece for the extra armor and the heavy one. But ultimately, if you want max damage, you want 7 medium. If you want more health, go 1 heavy, and it really just depends. So with that said, our next set is the Vicious Ophidian. Now this set has been used for so long at this point, and it's just good. So you can get this from all the Craglorn trials, Sanctum Ophidia, Ethereal Archive, Hellraw Citadel. The difference is on normal you get it in blue quality, veteran you get it in purple and gold. So ultimately, if you want best in slot, absolute min-max, then you want to go for the veteran. But realistically, in terms of damage difference between using blue and gold is very small. But min-maxing is, in fact, min-maxing. So I have 3 jewelry pieces of that, all weapon damage, and 2 of these. I don't know if you guys can actually see it. Let me just take off all of these first. So I have 2 Vicious Ophidian daggers, and my main hand, I use the Infused trait, simply because the poison damage actually does add a few extra 1,000 damage. Before, I actually did a lot of extensive testing with a lot of combinations. So before we say anything, main hand is the Infused poison, and offhand is the sharpened with the weapon damage. Now, I tested like Infused and Precise, or Infused Nirnhoned, double sharpened, Precise Infused on like a lot of swapping. I wasted so much gold just upgrading like Hunding's Rage and Vicious Ophidian daggers with different traits. So in my opinion, Infused and Sharpened is absolute top damage, but ultimately, it also depends on your group composition as well. So if you like running 4-mans dungeons, double sharpened might be okay. If you're running trials, then you may or may not need a sharpened, but it always helps. So zeroing the enemy in trials, this may or may not be super useful. So main hand, offhand. And then for the Maelstrom bow, I understand not everyone is going to have a Maelstrom bow because it's not easy to complete. If you don't have one, alternative options are the Master bow, which you get from Veteran Dragonstar. I think the difference between is the skill you use. So Maelstrom is your volley, which is Endless Hail, or the bigger radius one. I don't remember what it's called. But the Master one is the Poison Inject, or I'll just show you right here, whatever the skill is. It's this skill all the way in the 5th line for the Master one. And with the recent expansion to Clockwork City, they had an Asylum weapon. And if you get that one, I would say that one is not the most optimal, but it's still better than using some random trait one, or just like random bow. So the Arrow Spray one is for the Asylum, this one is for Master, and this one is for Maelstrom. So the most damage would obviously come from the Maelstrom bow, that's why I still use it. And if you don't have it, Master also works too. You'll get slightly less damage, but it's okay. So also, I've been testing the Maelstrom bow with a lot of other traits. Infused, actually, since they made it a set item, before it would scale to like the set effect. Now that they changed it, it used to be the set effect was the enchant, and now they took away that and just put it into a set, so the infused is kind of irrelevant now. So I guess you'd still want to use sharpened, maybe Nirnhoned. I still use sharpened because I think it does help a lot, actually. So if you have a Maelstrom, it's good. 2nd place is the Master, 3rd place is Asylum. If you don't have either of those, then just use any random bow that's sharpened and you'll probably be fine. And with the weapon enchant, I just put that one on because I don't think it scales. If I used a poison one and then put another poison one on back, I don't think it would scale that much, so I just put a weapon damage enchant. I have not really tested it too much, but I have tested it a little bit, and I found that the weapon damage does slightly more damage. So with that said, let's see, what else do I use? That's pretty much it. So let's go over some items that you could use if you don't want to use what I'm using, obviously. There are a few items that I've also been testing. There's Two-Fang Snake, or the Twice-Fang Snake, whatever it's called. That one has gotten nerfed in the last patch, which made it a little bit less damage than Hunting's Rage, but it is also more difficult to get. So Hunting's Rage is craftable. Pretty much anyone can get it. You can buy it from traders, ask your friend to make it for you. And I would just honestly recommend this one. But other recommendations, Two-Fang Snake, possibly Spriggans. That's like last choice you really want to use. And I guess that's it. Or if you want to use Vicious Ophidian on the body, and I don't know, whatever else, Hundings on daggers, you technically can. So the difference between Hundings on daggers versus 5 body pieces is when you're on your main bar and you kill something, you gain stamina, but it has to be on your dual wield bar, so it's basically a 5-piece set. Versus you get more sustain versus more damage, and I chose the extra damage, so that's why Vicious Ophidian would be better on your weapons, and having the flat damage on both bars for the Hundings is the best choice. Min-max is min-max, you do what you want. So yeah, let's go into our attributes and buffs, Mundus Stones, and whatever. Usually, I've been saying this for the past 2.5 years, I've been making videos over this, or like 3 years. 17,000 health at very minimum with food is what you want to be going for. I probably could take out another point into health, but it's whatever. I like to have 17.2. And that's with 7 points into health and 57 into stamina. So you could probably take out the 7 and put it like a glyph into your helmet or something. It would probably be the same thing. We used the Warrior Mundus Stone because it gives flat out weapon damage, and we already have a high crit. So this has changed like 2 patches ago. People used to use the Thief or the Shadow. Now people use the Warrior because flat damage with your crit already that high. It's just more damage. In terms of food, we just use blue food, which is right here. It doesn't have to exactly be this one, but as long as it gives health and stamina, you're good to go. Potions, we use the weapon power potions. This has not changed in the past 3 years. Essentially, you use the same thing as always. It gives weapon damage, crit, and restores stamina and increased recovery. So that's good to use. When I'm doing like overworld, non-dungeons, non-trials, just use regular green potions because these do get expensive after a while. But when you are doing like timed events or runs, you want to be doing the most damage you possibly can. And that's where you go. If you're trying to do PvP, I have something a little bit different. I run this Torg's Pact and Shield Breaker. That is mostly to counter people who spam shields like sorcerers and, you know, just like Dragon Knights sometimes. But this is really just a PvP set, all the impen. And no, this Asylum weapon is kind of irrelevant. I got it from a weekly, so never mind that one. This one, this drink, I kind of have. I've been testing a little bit. I don't really use it, but it's more for recovery, and Dragon Knights don't really need recovery. I could pretty much sit at my target skeleton for like 20 minutes straight, not run out of stamina, and I'll just be fine. If you're doing your rotation right, you shouldn't ever run out of resources, and that's pretty much it. So, now on to the more important part. We're going into the champion points. Before I show you anything in the champion points, I want to say that this is what works for me. If you're using something that works for you, just keep it. But this is what's I've been using for Clockwork City and on. So I think the blue tree is the most important, then red tree for depending on what you're doing, and green tree is kind of just irrelevant. So let's start off with the red one because this one also changes depending on the trial you're doing. So like if you're doing Vet Maw versus like Craglorn trials or just dungeons, you could change it up. So I have 49 into Hardy, 49 into Elemental Defender, and 51 into Thick-Skinned. Before this used to be, before Clockwork City, that is, when you had only 660 points versus 690 that we have now. This used to be 48, but now it's 51 just to boost it up to the next percentage. And we have 37 into Ironclad, and then mostly more into Spell Shield so you don't die as much. So pretty much what we changed is these stayed the same. Add 3 points into here. Boost this up to the next percentage, and then add the rest into Spell Shield. And that's pretty much it. If you're trying to do like Maw or something, you're probably going to want to add more into Thick-Skinned and take out a little bit from, I don't know, Elemental Defender or something like that. But ultimately, if what I'm showing you works for pretty much every trial, if you really don't want to change it, but it's really up to you. Going into the blue tree or the ritual, we have 66 points into Thaumaturge, 66 into Precise Strikes, 49 into Mighty, and 17 into Piercing. I've been testing the Piercing out, like playing around with more or less points. If you don't want as much into Piercing, you could take it out and put it into Mighty. That would also change your damage up a little bit. Depending on your group as well, you could have more into Piercing, and you'll also be fine. So, Master at Arms, we have 23. That's just to boost it up to the next percentage. And 9 into Physical Weapon Expert. This is if you know how to light weave properly, light and heavy weave, which you should be doing anyway. So that's up to 6%. Now, I've seen some people take out all the points into here, add it into either Mighty or Piercing. That's really up to you, but this just works for me. If you were to change anything, though, Piercing, you could add more or add less into here and put it into Mighty or whatever these two are. So, ultimately, that's what works for me. Now, Green Tree, this is kind of irrelevant because I don't even... Sometimes I've been messing around with this. Shadow Ward, I have 2 points into here. 1% is irrelevant. It, like, you might block and reduce the cost by maybe 300, and it's not really noticeable. You want 100 into Tenacity when you heavy attack, which you should be doing 2 or 3 times into your rotation. You just get more magic and stam, which is always good. Now we have 75 into Mooncalf, And I think the difference between 25 points is like another 1% or something. So that's why we only have 75 in there. And so your stamina is 14% instead of 15. 1% is not really noticeable for 25 points. That's why we have 51 into Warlord. Break free, you don't actually have to have Warlord as much, but I do a lot of dungeons and trials where breaking free is pretty important. So having the 19% reduced cost helps me a lot. And that's why I have it. But if you don't want to, you could pretty much just put it into whatever. If you're like bashing more often, you could put it there. Ultimately, you could put the 25 points into here if you really wanted to. But I just break free a lot, dodge roll, and then sprint. It's kind of also irrelevant. And that's how I set up my CP. The only thing I would really change is the red tree. Depending on what trial you're doing. Maw, add more into thick skinned. If you're doing like Sanctum, you might want to put more into the poison resist. And what else can I think of? Hellraw, I would probably put more into LA Defender because there's a lot of fire damage. AA, more into LA Defender. If you're doing any like Clockwork City stuff, you would be putting more into Elemental Defender because it's lightning. And let's see what other trials is there. Halls of Fabrication, there's a lot of physical. There's just a lot of elements in Halls of Fabrication. But pretty much just split it even for the most part. If you don't have maxed out CP, then what I would recommend doing first is, let's say you had 300 champion points. I would put like 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2. Just even it out until you get maxed out eventually. And then it should look like this eventually when you're completed at 690. Alright, so that was pretty much delayed. So that was the champion points and how I set mine up. Ultimately, if you want to use what you have currently and it works for you, stay with that one. But that's just what I use personally. So let's go into the skills and I'll show you what I use and why I use it. So for the most part, the skills should look the same, minus like one skill. And that's just changeable depending on the situation. And the second bar, or number 2 here, is our bow bar. First one is our dual wield bar where we have the daggers. So our first skill is the Noxious Breath because it is a strong dot. Pretty much all our abilities are dots. We don't really have a main spammable. And you just have to keep your dots up at all times. You have like 9 of them. And that's probably the hardest part of your rotation is knowing how to keep your timers up. So Noxious Breath, I believe the other morph is a magic morph. So as a stam build, we use a stam one. Pretty self-explanatory. It's a strong dot. It also reduces the resistances of the enemy by about 5,000. Fracture, the same thing as a tank, like puncture thingy. It's good to have. Next thing we have is Venomous Claw, and this one is also another dot. People usually think of this as a spammable. It's not. It's a dot damage. You deal damage, and then poison damage, and then more damage over 10 seconds. So trying not to recast this early is the best thing possible because the longer it ticks, the more damage it does. And some people cast it with like 2 seconds left, which is reducing their damage by a lot. Myself included, I need to work on letting the actual skill run out before casting it again. And sometimes I cast it with like 1 second left, and that's not what you want to do. So it's all just practice. And with that said, third is our Rending Slashes is under our dual wield. A lot of people switch out to morphs between Rending and Blood Craze. Rending Slashes does slightly more damage versus Blood Craze. Blood Craze does less damage, but it heals you over the dot time. And usually it's a little bit better for survivability if you want to use Blood Craze, Maelstrom included. But if you want absolute max damage, Rending Slashes is the way to go. It does actually do a lot. Next we have Deadly Cloak. It's pretty much our shield. As you may imagine, stam characters don't have shields like magic characters do. So this reduces the damage we take by like 25%, reducing AoEs, poison, and whatnot. And so that's really good. Definitely a must slot for yourself. Stam characters are usually more scary to play, I guess you can say, in trials and endgame stuff. So definitely want this to reduce damage. And next we have Flames of Oblivion on this bar. You really want to have this on your main bar because dual wield is the primary source of your damage, and Flames of Oblivion is like a small dot we keep on, but the reason why we have this is because it increases your spell and weapon rating by 2191. So the second like paragraph in the tooltip. So that's why we want to have it on the main bar. Never have it on your back bar, only main bar. And yeah, dot, 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 sorta a dot, but mostly shield, and dot. And then this one, I've actually been testing it a lot. Flawless Dawnbreaker versus the Dawnbreaker of Smiting. When I'm doing solo content like Maelstrom, I would switch the Flawless Dawnbreaker out to the Smiting. The reason why is the stun effect of the other morph is a lot more useful in solo content. And if I'm running trials or dungeons with the healer, the Dawnbreaker is slightly better because you want the extra 5% damage, and it just does a little bit more in general. So having it slotted increases your weapon damage by 5%, and it does slightly more, but it doesn't stun or knock down the enemy. So it really depends on the situation. If you just like running Maelstrom, I would get the other morph. If you like running group content, get the Flawless one. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So back bar is our bow bar, like I mentioned. One, we have the poison injection. I forgot what the pre-morph is called, but what you're going to want to get is poison injection, because this is also a dot. You shoot it, and it's also considered technically an execute. So if an enemy is under 50% health, the poison inject starts to tick higher and higher for damage. So that's what you kind of want to start out with, and then make sure your poison inject is up 100% of the time under 50%. Endless Hail. The reason why we chose this morph is because we do have a Maelstrom bow. Even if I didn't have a Maelstrom bow, I'd probably still use this one. The reason why is it lasts a little bit longer than the other morph. However, it does have a smaller radius. So if you know how to aim your circles, then you should be fine. The other one hits more targets, but this one lasts longer. And with the Maelstrom bow, like I mentioned earlier, every second it ticks, it does more damage. So having the morph that extends the time on this is just flat out more damage. That's why Endless Hail is always the #1 like most damaged ability on your parse chart if you use the add-on, and you can see it, which I'll be showing you at the end of this video. I'll have some screenshots of some of my parses and various things. So Endless Hail, if you have a Maelstrom bow. If you don't, either morph is fine, but I would honestly, even if I didn't have a Maelstrom bow, I'd still go with Endless Hail anyway, just because it is slightly more damage. But if you do have it, this morph is the 100% choice. Now, next we have Caltrops. Now, I understand not everyone enjoys PvPing, so if you don't have Caltrops, the next choice I would put is Vigor. If you don't have Vigor, there's like a few other things I would probably put. So, Vigor is one of your self heals that you have. If you don't have it, I would go Green Dragon's Blood or the Dragon's Blood, and then the morph is Green Dragon's Blood. That one's just Stam 1, or that's not a Stam, that's magic, but it's the best for stamina. So that would be our only self heal, and that's very important. You kind of want to at least go for Vigor, and then Caltrops is just a bonus. It does a lot of damage. It's usually Caltrops, I would say, a second or third on my parse damage or most damaged abilities. So the morph of the regular is the Razor, and that one just increases your damage. And Caltrops is pretty good. Vigor is a really high priority. You do want to get it, but if you're like starting a new character and you don't have it, use Dragon's Blood. Next we have our Trap. It's under here. The morph of it is Rearming Trap. The reason why we got this one instead of the one that you toss is because it rearms itself. You don't have to push the button during your rotation twice. It just rearms itself, and it makes your rotation easier, and it does more damage. So one thing that's really important, like when you get your ultimate here in your Trap, you want to get the Slayer passive, because each, like 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 3, it gives your weapon damage 1% for each, so that's very important. Next one is Banish the Wicked. You gain ultimate when you kill undead, danger, or werewolves, and that's, you know, always a bonus to use your ultimate faster. And then the tracker, you get 20% extra damage to undead, daedra, and werewolves. Don't really notice it too much, but I'd rather have it than not have it. Of course, increasing your health pool and you're hitting your synergies by your Undaunted is always good at 2. Something you just get by doing dungeons. You'll get it eventually. And our final skill is our Molten Armaments under here. And the reason why you get this, even though it is a Magicka ability, is because it increases your damage with the heavy attacks, which you should be adding at least 2 to 4 in your rotation. So that's something you definitely want to be looking for. And in terms of your spell damage, it's not really that important because most of the things you're going to be doing are physical or weapon damage. But, I mean, if you're going to have it, you might as well. What you're really using it for is the heavy attack increase, and that actually does a few thousand extra damage to your total, and it's definitely worth using. So, if you don't have it and you're still leveling, you could also use the Flames of Oblivion on both bars until you get this one. Then I would 100% switch it out. And of course, our ultimate on our back bar is the standard, because standard just does a lot of damage and you should have it. And once again, leveling this one up is a high priority. You're probably going to get standard way before you get the Dawnbreaker in the Fighters Guild. So double slotting the standard is always a good choice. And then once you get it, min-maxing is min-maxing to 5% on your main bar is good. And then get your standard on your back bar when you're done. So pretty much that is my entire diary or build video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think. In a few seconds, I'll be showing you some screenshots, but if you got all this and you just need a screenshot, I'll superstar it. This is an add-on I use. A lot of people ask me to like review their builds or tell them what they can fix. There's this add-on called Superstar. It does this. It shows you pretty much all the gear. Green means medium, red means heavy, blue means light, and it shows you the traits, all your champion points, health, weapon damage, penetration, all your skills, main bar, back bar, and all that stuff. So, if you want me to look at your build or something and help you with that, there's an add-on for PC called Superstar. You just get this, take a screenshot, and then you can send it to me on like social media, and I'll be happy to look at it. So with that said, if you want a screenshot, you can click it now, and just use this as a reference. Oh yeah, I forgot to show you after all of that. I'll show you my rotation in a slow way, I guess. I'll show you how I do my rotation, but I'm not going to show you the full entire thing, but I'll go slowly so you guys can figure it out. So just keep in mind 2 is my bow bar, 1 is my dual wield bar. So I'll show you how to set everything up. First, you're going to want to cast your Molten Armaments as we got before. You guys can look, I would say, right here on the screen. This is an add-on I use called Shrendar, and it pretty much just counts your timers down. I set mine up. It's not going to look like I did. You're going to have to mess around with the add-on. So that's something you're going to want to play with first. But first, we would hit our Molten Armaments. I'm not going to use a pot because I just don't want to. But then you would use your potion. Second, drop your trap. And then drop your Caltrops. Endless Hail. Poison Injection. Then you would bar swap. Then you would hit your Molten Armaments. Or not Molten Armaments. The Flames of Oblivion. And the... what is it? Deadly Cloak. But sometimes I like to buff up before the fight and hitting all like back bar 5, 5, 4 when I bar swap. Those are your dots, and then you could drop this, 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 this. Then next we have our Rending Slashes on our 3. I try to add a heavy attack in between, then our Venomous Claw, then heavy attack again, and then the Noxious Breath. So that's pretty much the rotation. I'll show it a little bit faster this time. So if we were to start and buff it up, and I'll drop everything here, do everything, drop it. So what it looks like is if I had all 9 buffs up, dots at the same time, I would do that. And then whenever it resets, whenever your first one goes out, start over, then you're dead. This is usually the endless tail is the first one to run out, and you poison inject again, that drop all of these, and then you pretty much reset all your dots again while adding heavy attacks in between. And when you're rotating from your second bar to your first bar, and then back to your second bar again to reapply your dots and bow abilities, if you have your standard, drop it on your second one, not your first one, because when you're doing it on the first one, what people have told me who are like on the higher leaderboards and all that stuff is if you drop your standard at the very beginning, it just ticks time down while you're trying to apply your dots. But if you have your dots going up and then you're bar swapping, like the other half on your main bar is going to be swapped or still going, and you have a few extra seconds to drop your standard. And then by the time you drop your standard, the buffs on your main bar are going to be, or your dots on the main bar are going to be running out. So then you could apply that. Usually I do have a 95% or higher rotation uptime, and that's usually good. So let me just get this to 250. So my ultimate is up, and with a potion or a spell power potion, you should be doing a few extra thousand. So just to start this off, like I'll show you my rotation. I'm not actually going to kill it, but you would want to start with this, buff up again, buff up, drop your trap, caltrops, endless tail, do that, drop your dots again. You don't want to spam anything, and just keep, like, if you can, heavy attack. And then, so this one, 1 and 2 should go out, and then the next one should go out is poison inject, that, and then here, see how I have half my dots up? You would drop your standard there, and then reapply all your dots again, and just, like, keep practicing your rotation, and just keep setting up your dots as they go out. So, usually, that's what people have taught me. You guys can see some of my parse numbers in a little bit right about now. So, with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys had a fantastic day, and I will see you guys all next time.